This is Stephen Kotler, and you're listening to Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anita Murjani, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hello, this is Dr. Raymond Moody, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, Cultural Creatives. I'm Bruce Lipton, and I'm here to join you with Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. Thank you for taking the time to download. You are listening to Your Superior Self podcast, and I am your host, Trey Downs. I am going to be connecting you with that greatness inside of you, that beingness, that everythingness, that infinite possibility of human potential. And to help me connect you with that source of greatness, I have Dr. Lona Cook joining the show. She's going to help us reconnect with some fascinating ideas, some concepts that we need to start exploring more of and being more, I guess, comfortable in just questioning things. Taking a look at our bodies and seeing what's going on biologically in relation to what's going on in our lives. Like, what is it? How do they correlate? How does my reality correlate with my physiology? Are they affecting one another? And I think you'll be surprised by some of her answers and some of her concepts. And I also think she's onto something about how the paradigm is shifting. And to give you an example of that, here's a small clip.
I think people do want to have that. I think they haven't been taught that that's even their right to have that. And that's part of the system that I think is kind of crashing around us right now, is that the old model is dying, essentially. And the new model puts the patient as their doctor and empowers the patient again. In my mind, that's where we're headed. Instead of it being like, you know, your doctor knows best. It's like, no, you know best. Now find people who help you grow you into a better you and do it for your health and other avenues of your life, you know?
Oh, can I get an amen on that? Amen. Because you are responsible for your realities. You're responsible for your bodies. You are responsible for everything that happens to you. I know it's hard to hear. I know it's something that some people really fight with to their core. But I'm telling you, you are in control of everything that happens. Your reality, your perception of what that is a direct mirror of what you are feeling, thinking, and doing. Change those three things. Change them. Not drastically, not overnight, but one step at a time, and your life will begin to morph into something that you do not recognize anymore. Something that will inspire you, that will grow you, that will change you for the better. I promise you that. And by listening to podcasts like this one and these episodes, you're opening yourself up to new concepts, new ideas that push you forward, that evolve you into a higher human potential. That's why we're here. That is why we're here experiencing this reality, is because we need to, as consciousness, expand our awareness, expand and develop and evolve and continue to progress in our understanding of concepts or life or reality, but to better understand what we are, who we are, truly are, and to be at one with that and live our lives daily in that conscious awareness of what we truly are, and your life will change. It may not seem like it at first. You may struggle because of your paradigms, because of your concepts, because of your conditioning, because they will all go against what you've been taught. And because of the fear of going against change, the fear of changing, that holds us back from evolving, because we're not open to new ideas, new concepts, like Dr. Lona Cook discusses in this episode. And I am getting fired up, and I'm just gonna stop. I'm gonna cut it off right now and allow you guys to listen to this episode. So without further ado, here is my conversation with the great and powerful Dr. Lona Cook.
Hey guys, this is Lona Cook, and this is Your Superior Self.
I can't even do it that good. Lona, thank you so much for coming on the show and hanging out with me tonight. what are you doing? What is up with you? What's going on with you tonight?
Oh, well, tonight, I mean, end of the night, I got two small kids at home. So I'm actually having, a moment to myself and having a conversation. So it's a good night. I just got off of a little meeting for our state association here in Wisconsin, doing big things for helping people with their health, which relates to their spirituality. So it's been
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, yes.
Oh, that's awesome. So you, my friend, we've had a conversation prior to you coming on the show, and it was very powerful and very deep. You have a fantastic practice where you're at. What are you about? Like, I know, being a chiropractor traditionally hasn't been, I don't know. You talk about that. Like, what is it? What has it been traditionally viewed upon? And why do you make it so different?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think for so many reasons, we don't have to go into, I think chiropractic has pigeonholed itself at times into back pain, neck pain. And so people hear the word and then they either think, oh yeah, I use it for when my back is whatever, or I don't need a chiropractor because I don't have a spine issue. And, there's everywhere in between about how they feel about it. But what it's done for my own life is really showed me this connection between the physical body and who we are mentally, emotionally, spiritually, which when I started going down the rabbit hole of chiropractic philosophy or Eastern philosophy and some of these deeper levels of understanding, why does someone heal when someone else doesn't, or what really makes up the physical body? And it's more than just a machine. The more I went to the roots of chiropractic, which were based in spiritualism, and the guy that founded chiropractic was really interesting, which, that could be a whole podcast in and of itself, but essentially he was on to like metaphysical practices and almost like quantum physics before there was a coined area of science that way. And so as I got excited about that and started to look at not only my own life that way, but then those who are on my table, my patients, the more I could see the interconnected in, who we are and if we're connected to our God and our spirit and our higher self and what our body does versus when we're disconnected or in states that feel more disconnected, like anger and fear and, just states that feel contracted, like what does the body do then? And then the cool part about that is there's such a connection between our nervous system, that cord, that spinal cord, that's the energy center. So I just kind of geek out all week long working on people because I look at it like, as I'm adjusting them, their energy's flowing better. What does that ripple off to, not only in their physical body, but in their life?
Ooh, man, you said a lot that just really intrigued me. So like you can tell like people's energy levels and, you said something about spirituality in there too, just from laying on the table.
Yeah. Well, it's all connected, right? Like, I think you would agree that, because I know we had a good conversation about states and spirituality. And I know one of the questions you had asked me is like, what's one of the most powerful books that I recommend? And the book,
besides your book.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that later too. So David Hawkins, he was a psychiatrist that wrote the book, Power versus Force, and then all the books that came off of it. And that book was really pivotal in my understanding of people have energetic states and we all have experienced various states, but we might have a state or two that are more dominant for us. And, so when someone's on the table, you can feel that on them. Obviously, someone who practices basketball every day can shoot a free throw and not miss hardly ever. And someone who touches spines all day long and holds other people's energy can feel things off of people that is different than someone who doesn't do that, so it's just practice and becoming aware and attuned to your own energy as well as the person that you're connecting with is an art form. And that's also where chiropractic, we say that there's a philosophy, there's a science, and there's an art, and so you've got to look at all of those legs of that stool to become, I think, an adept chiropractor or healer. But yeah, you can tell a lot about somebody based on their posture, based on what their tracks of their spine are showing us. There's so many things that are fascinating.
Can you look at their spine and see where, they're having difficulties in their own life?
Yeah, I can't pretend to look at you and know everything, but I think there's a lot of things that are patterns that you could read off of somebody's body physiology and know some deeper things that they may not want to share or be even fully aware of.
What's a crazy story that you recognize in somebody and we're like, is this going on in your life? And they were like blown away.
I think there's so many. It's not even crazy stories.
So many. I got so many.
It's so literal. So my example would be this. So have you read the book, Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life? Have you ever heard that?
I have not yet. No.
Okay. So that book is great for people beginning to want to understand like the literal sense of the body. So I'm going to pick on back pain because it's so common. We see so many people who complain of back pain, and it's one of the probably number one reasons people see doctors or chiropractors or anyone. And when you think about what your lower back, for instance, represents in your structure, it is like the base, it's the foundation, it's the support center, especially your lower back. And so when you read the like emotional and metaphysical connection there, it's like either feeling like you don't have any support or that you have to support everyone else. And how many people in their lives, whether it's true or not, feel that, feel like they're carrying the burden of someone else, or financially they're taxed and they don't have enough to go around. And so we see back pain is rampant. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not a physical component to that. Like if we looked at their L5 disc, is it degenerating? Possibly, if we saw the x-ray of it. But it's fascinating when you start to recognize how interconnected it all is, where I'll have somebody who comes in, their back went out. They don't know what they did. It's more common than it is for people to think they know why their body is doing something, for them to just like, well, I just woke up today and then this happened. Or, I picked up a piece of paper and then this happened. And it's like, well, why today? Why does the body all of a sudden do it? And then you'll find out a little more if they're open, where they're like, oh, my kid moved home, they lost their job, and now they're, on my payroll again, basically. Okay, that makes sense. Or I'll use an example. My mom has been in a bad place for a long time. And so this is a couple of years ago, but I was frustrated. She didn't come over for Thanksgiving, and she had said she was going to. So I went for a run because I was mad. So I was like, I'm going to release this energy. I'm just going to go for a run. But I was like marinating on my negative thought, and I slipped, tripped on my dog, broke my toe. And the toe I broke, if you read about the different patternings, I think a lot of us have seen how like the bottom of the foot can represent like various organ systems and things like that. Like each part of the body is like a microcosm to the macrocosm of the rest of the system. And so the part of the toe that I broke kind of represents your like joy in life. And, I was letting that steal my joy. And it is like the universe stopped me, or God stopped me right then. Like, here's a clean break. You need to stop. And that's what I'm saying, like literal translations in the body, if you're willing to see them. So do I know what's going on with all my people on the table? No, but I understand that I'm never going to know everything going on, but there's certain patterns that I can at least,
what questions to ask.
Yes.
What questions to ask to get some of that information out.
Yeah. To help them make the connection. Cause I don't need to know. They might need to know though.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. Like, that's interesting about the toe. So go back to Dr. David Hawkins, Power versus Force. Fantastic. Like he really, really sparked that aha moment for me in regards to like levels of consciousness. Like now, like it started making sense to me now. Like the more that you take care of your body, the more that you eat right, the more that you dive into more positivity, the more that you fine tune that antenna, which the filter, which is your brain, right? And you receive consciousness, the higher levels you can achieve. And in those higher levels of consciousness, you have more access. I wouldn't say more access. You have access to higher bits of information, right? And that's basically what I got out of all of his books. And there's levels, and he numbers them. It's like numerical. Like what is it? 250 is like the lowest, right? It's like 250 is the lowest.
0 would be like death.
Well, Zoe is death. But 250 is like right where you start. I don't know. I guess it's like where
250 is where you're starting to move into positive states. 200 is like the tipping point over into like an attractor field versus a repulsion. So like someone who's in shame or guilt, you generally don't want to spend a lot of time in that place. So they're not probably attracting a lot of good opportunities in their life, you know. And then anger has more energy than shame or guilt, but it's still not a positive place where you can decipher truth. Usually when you're angry, you know, that clouds a lot of judgment. And then when you get higher, like the courage and willingness, like I can see that maybe I need to change. Maybe I don't know everything. Maybe, you know, that's the point of change, what you're talking about, where you get to a point where you can decipher, like there's new possibilities in my life I couldn't see when I was in those lower states.
Sure. But do you see a lot of Americans in those lower states of consciousness? I'm telling you.
Yeah, you're probably right. I choose to okay, I also believe that if you said it beautifully, there's an antenna, right? And our brain is, and our antenna is like how we receive. So I don't remember where I first read this, where it was like, you know, where do your thoughts come from? Are they actually in your head? And now I kind of believe they're not. You're just an antenna for like what's in human consciousness or the field. Lynn McTaggart wrote a book, I believe, called The Field, that talks about how what's available to us as a collective, you know, depending on how you're tuned, you're going to receive various parts of that collective. And then, you know, like you said, there's almost like different hierarchies of, depending on how clear your antenna is, what are you going to access? Is it going to be in higher states of consciousness, like enlightenment, or is it going to be in other places? But you know,
well, here's the thing. I don't mean to like say anything bad about, you know, US is lower conscious. I'm just saying that there is a comfort level in people where they're at today. But I think you're seeing a shift in consciousness. Like I am all about spreading positivity and spreading awareness about consciousness out there so that people can kind of say, all right, well, hey, look, maybe there's something that I could be doing better. One, get up early, go for a run, go for a walk, start eating healthier, start doing little things that are going to spread positivity, start thinking differently. You know, if you're a negative thinker, start thinking more positive. You know, positive psychology is a big thing, and people don't understand it. They just think it's changing your thoughts to be happier. And it's not that. It's like, it is trying to be preventative and like anxiety and depression. It's like, instead of treating the disease, they want to be preventative. They want to start, you know, being more about well-being and mental wellness rather than treating the disease. And you start doing these little things, and they add up over time. And then that's where you're seeing your consciousness. You're starting to achieve different levels of awareness. You're starting to receive more curiosity about things. You start looking at some of the research, some of the literature out there about, I don't know, Power versus Force by Dr. Hawkins. And you start looking at that, and you're not looking at it like you would 10 years ago. You wouldn't, you know, like things like that, little baby steps.
Yeah. It's all about
start changing the game.
Totally. I had a patient today who she looks great. She's lost like 25 pounds. And I said, you look great. And she goes, you know, I just decided I wasn't going to think about losing weight anymore. And instead I was just going to nourish my body and really try and take care of myself. And the weight just kind of fell off. And it was literally just that little shift, she said, in her mind of like, I'm not going to badger myself about weight anymore. I'm going to just take care of myself and try and put food in my body that's actually good for it, for the right reason of taking care of myself. And it's like, that seems like such a subtle shift, but energetically, that's a big shift.
Well, can you explain to some of the listeners out there about Dr. Hawkins's, what is it? The muscle testing?
Yeah. Okay. So it's called applied kinesiology, and kind of goes back to what we were just saying, where if everybody is their own like antenna or tuning fork, our system is, especially if it's above that kind of threshold of truth, above 200, it can decipher through the strength of the system, whether something is actually positive or life-giving for it versus the opposite. So in chiropractic, there's certain techniques that are definitely based off of a similar, it's called AK, but a yes and no response. Like, yes, I should adjust here. No, I shouldn't adjust here. Or yes, my body likes the supplement. No, it doesn't like the supplement. So he used it in determining these questions of like where things were at on this consciousness scale. But we can use it in our day-to-day life too, by learning what a yes response in the body. Some people will use pendulums. Some people will use like their arm and test the strength of their arm in regards to like, you could ask my arm. If I just said, show me a yes response, the test of like how strong my arm is for a yes response, show me a no response. Okay. My name is Lona Cook. Yes. My name is Trey Downs. No, it should give a yes and no response. Same thing. Like I should eat this organic apple. Yes. I should eat this apple loaded with pesticides. No, like the system is intelligent. Our systems, our bodies are intelligent, and it essentially is your best doctor if you learn how to know how to navigate that.
Yeah.
And is a way for it to tell you those things.
Yeah, it's crazy. He had demonstrations where he had like big, Ziploc bags of sugar. Some of it was organic. I think some of it was, I don't know, or something vice versa. Something was either organic and the other one was used, pesticides were on it. And it was like a Ziploc bag, and they could see what it was, and they were passing it around. And people with the organic stuff, when they did the muscle testing, they were strong. And then the people that had the pesticides, they went weak, but they didn't know which was which. It was like a double blind almost.
Yeah.
But
I know, how woo until you learn more and watch more, and then start to really think about, like you said, like the more you start to just question some of the things, then you realize like, yeah, that's not that out there. Actually, it's like some of us do this unconsciously and we don't even realize it. When you have your intuitive, like, I don't know why, that's not right for me, and this is right for me. We do this already.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know what to call it, and we don't know we can use it for almost anything.
Not at all. How do you do it? Like, do you do it? Like, so it's hard. You got to put your arm straight out, right? And then somebody tests it for you, but they have to be at a conscious level above like 250 or something like that. They have to be somebody that's,
you could do it with like just a pendulum, or you can, sometimes the way I usually do it is like, I'll stand and then just ask myself, like, whatever the question is, like, if it's something in my business, I might ask a business question to myself and then feel if my body sways forward or sways backwards, by closing my eyes. If it goes forward, it's like an attractor. If it goes backwards, it's like a repulsion. Part of it is you have to trust yourself too. So sometimes I'll have my good girlfriend that I practice with, Dr. Amanda, I'll be like, can you test this for me? Cause I don't know if I trust myself to get the right answer on this one, and let her muscle test it. But I also think, like you said, go for a run, do these things that help your state. For me, I know I need to exercise. And then part of my state being in a higher place, I usually will let the advice that kind of drops in those times when I feel really good be the direction that I try and listen to. So it doesn't have to be that I'm testing something necessarily. It's more like, get yourself in a good place and then follow that mojo basically to create more of it in your life.
Love that. So you're being in the medical field, like how much are you listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton?
Love their stuff. Read their books, try and go to seminars that they're at. I think they're thought leaders for everybody right now. Mm-hmm.
So belief equals biology. I think that book was Bruce Lipton. Phenomenal research. Mm-hmm. I was trying to explain it to my dad, and he was kind of, what are you talking about? Because we were talking about genetics, and Bruce Lipton, his main theory is that genetics is a blueprint. It's not something, your environment reads the blueprint of the cells, and then that triggers, the signal. How does he say it? The signal goes through basically the cell wall is the brain of the cell. And when it allows the signal to go in, then that signal reads the blueprint of the gene, and that's what triggers that gene. So depending on the signals coming from your brain. So if your belief is, I'm going to go bald, but if everyone tells you you're going to go bald and you believe you're going to go bald, you're going to go bald. Like it's and the placebo effect is proof of that.
Right. And
in 83, they had
way before everyone else. Like, I don't know if you'd listened to some of his interviews where he talked about like, he'd present on basically like epigenetics at these conferences. And he said, like, you could hear a pin drop because people were like, what did he just say? Like that we're not destined to be our genes. You know, it was like he was a heretic at the time for saying some of this. And now here we are where epigenetics is like a field of study and people recognize you can turn gene expression off. And yeah, so fascinating.
It's crazy. It's
Mhm.
crazy. Yeah, I'm very careful about what I think about.
Very liberating for
It's
people
very
to know,
liberating.
like, you're not destined to be whatever you thought you were destined to be. Just now, if you can change your thoughts, that's the next game. But yeah,
But doesn't that put the responsibility back on the person?
correct.
And doesn't that, like, people, they don't want to have that. Like, a lot of people play the woe is me, where I'm the victim.
Yeah.
Right?
I think people do want to have that. I think they haven't been taught that that's even their right to have that. And that's part of the system that I think is kind of crashing around us right now, is that the old model is dying essentially. And the new model puts the patient as their doctor and empowers the patient again. In my mind, that's where we're headed. Instead of it being like, you know, your doctor knows best. It's like, no, you know best. Now find people who help you grow you into a better you and do it for your health and other avenues of your life, you know?
I love that. I've been looking around, like, so what kind of advice would you give to somebody? Like, for me, I guess, like, what type of doctor, like, when I go, like, I'm very much into that Dr. Joe Dispenza game, the Bruce Lipton game, where my belief is really, you know, my health. Like, I believe in a lot. Placebo effect, like, I can heal, you know, Dr. Joe Dispenza healed his broken back. I believe I can heal a lot of things that I have, a lot of ailments, just with, like, my energy, just realigning that stuff. But it's nice to have a source that I can go to for recommendations, right? Like, but so what type of doctors should I be going to that have the same type of philosophies?
Yeah, I think you would find yourself a vitalistic chiropractor first, a chiropractor who believes like the body's self-healing, self-regulating, not someone who's more mechanistic about it. So finding that rapport, and there's quite a few out there. So if you haven't found one yet, I would keep looking, or I can help you. And then also, like, for myself, and I send my family there, if we ever have something, like, for instance, my son had a tick on him, and it was like, well, rather than go get him tested by the traditional medicine to see if, like, there's Lyme's or anything like that, we go to a woman who's trained in nutrition response testing. So the AK, the applied kinesiology, like using his system to test, like, do you have Lyme's present in there? Yes or no? And then will these tinctures and vitamins essentially help your system get rid of it? Yes or no? Based off on, like, his body. So one thing that I became very aware of is that when I learned about AK, which is what we were talking about earlier, that your system gives off a yes and no response to really everything. Like, there were so many things I was doing, quote unquote, for my health that probably, like, I'll just pick on vitamins. You know, if you're taking all these vitamins that you think you're supposed to be taking, like, how many of them are actually being digested by your system and really doing anything for you if you don't know if they're actually, like, in rapport with your system or not? So, you know, I was buying quality vitamins and realized, like, none of them are actually doing anything for me. So,
But where do you go for that information, though? You know what I mean? Like,
where do you get it?
Yeah.
Where do you find it? You find someone who does nutrition response testing. So that's where, like, I think in the most mainstream, this is part of the reason why I'm, like, real excited for chiropractic in general, because I think, if anything, this past year and a half, I think, has moved more and more people into, like, I want to take care of my body. I want to do the best I can with my health. I want to find avenues for my health that I trust, that maybe aren't part of, you know, so many people don't trust big pharma and things like that at this point. And I can't blame them. And so this is where I think, like, if you find a chiropractor you resonate with, usually they're tapped into the holistic community and can help you find some of these other practitioners that may help build in pieces for you. So I think that's a good
Yeah, because I never really thought, you know, that's just me being, you know, I guess conditioned, I guess. I never really thought of a chiropractor that someone I would go to before a family doctor, right? Like you know, and and you're so right on about that, right? Like, so who started, your modality, right? Like you said, he's very metaphysical. Like, who was it? Like, I don't even know.
His name was D.D. Palmer.
Hmm.
He was into magnetic healing. He came from Canada to Iowa. This is like in the late 1800s. And so chiropractic's been around a little over 125 years. But he, like, the backstory was, from what I've read on the history, it was, post-Civil War. So a lot of people had lost loved ones. And one of the things that was, I'm just going to say, like, trendy is what I was reading at the time was something called spiritualism, which was kind of like channeling. And so allowing information to come through you, essentially. I don't know. Again, you could call it lots of different things, but he believes that he got the idea for chiropractic, like, to look to the spine for the source of dis-ease or disharmony in the body. And so he ended up, the first adjustment story is that there was a janitor in the building that he worked as a magnetic healer who had gone deaf after being like hit in the back of the head or the back of the back. And so he had heard for part of his life and then was deaf. And so anyways, this D.D. Palmer guy like felt his spine and then found this like lump and pushed essentially and did an adjustment, which we call it the first adjustment. And the guy regained hearing. And so he thought he had found a cure for deafness when really he had found a way to reduce nerve tension or strain on the nervous system, essentially. And so lots of things heal under chiropractic, but at the time that was like, okay, so now
I need you to send me a list of people in the Baltimore area ASAP.
Okay. I'm happy to do so. I would love to find you, and anyone else who listens, like, reach out to me. I will try and help you find good chiropractors.
You said something, you sent something that sparked my interest. Channelers. Do you, I mean, I do. Do you like that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I'm one of my best friends she's amazing. And so whether you call it she calls herself a visionary. I think we all do this and we don't know that we do it. And so it sounds, again, really like, if you grew up really religious, it's like, oh, that sounds taboo. And if you don't like the word channel, it sounds like ghosts. And so I'm trying to be sensitive in how I say this, but, we all get like these sixth sense. And one thing that my good friend taught me was like, some of us get it as like thoughts that drop in. Like, I don't know why I just got this thought, but I'm going to follow it. Other of us get it as like visions, or we hear something, and it even could be like literally on the radio, like it is happening, but you hear the same song 3 times in a row. And there's like something in the song that's meant for you. It's like, we just push that off as coincidence and don't realize that I believe this is an intelligent universe. So everything is orchestrated, like everything is in relationship to everything. So there's really no coincidences. And that's the beautiful part of all of this is like, to me, it's like, it's God is in everything. So when you say like, do you channel? I'm so interested in people who are more attuned to like higher energy and just more adept at using their sixth sense, whether you call that channeling or not. I know for myself that the more I open myself up to my own connection, the more like my life seems to have more fluidity to it and more of these like events that seem very like serendipitous and just like things flow. And I remember the book that I wrote is it's called Reclamation. A lot of it is about how do you go from, I was drunk a lot as earlier in my life, made not great decisions and was pretty disconnected. Although like people who knew me would have still said like, oh, I'm jumping through the hoops. I'm graduating college. I'm doing what I'm supposed to. I was very normal as far as what average normal is. But my life got to a point where, there's just a lot of like disharmony in it. And so as I go through the school of hard knocks, I wake up to like, you know what? You don't actually have to live the way you've always lived. Like you had said, you can start to change and start to listen within and make some of these changes happen. So that's what I wanted from my book that I put together, is to kind of show the juxtaposition of when you open yourself up to basically go within and try and tap into yourself and your higher abilities, how life gets kind of magical in a good way. And it's not supposed to be a woo-woo way. I mean, like, you live your purpose and things start to unfold where, you know, your dreams really can happen because you're not actively working against yourself anymore. I love that stuff.
I love that stuff too. You can call me woo-woo all day. I don't give a shit.
Right. Perfect.
I love it. Cause I meditate all the time, and, you know, I'll get in downloads, I guess people call downloads, because they don't feel comfortable enough, I guess, saying that they're receiving or hearing like advice or words. Like I'll get, you know, this morning I'm, you know, out by the water meditating, and I'm hearing a lot of great stuff. And at the very first, you know, session that I've ever done, you know, like a year or 2 years ago, like, yeah, I was left-brained, and I was like, what is this? No, you're just talking to yourself. You're just having thoughts. It's like, yeah, but these thoughts come from somewhere, right? Like who is, you know, I look at some channelers, and I look at one of my favorite is Paul Selig and Abraham Hicks, and
love Abraham.
Yes, the Seth books, and it's like, I look at them and it's like, but someone made a good point. I think it was Alan Steinfeld I had on the show. He was like, well, who's the voice coming through you? You know, like, who is that? That's coming from somewhere. And it's like, what does it matter? But here's the thing, right? So like you were talking about Lynn McTaggart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to lose this thought. I think, no, she wasn't her. It was Physics of God by The Physics of God. I'm forgetting his name, Shelby. I think his last name is Shelby. And he talks about
Rupert Sheldrake. Is that what you're talking about?
No, Shelby. I think it is something Shelby. He talks about, in psychology, you have, split personality disorder, where you have people with two different personalities coming through, and they'll put like a voice recorder on their throat when the other personality is coming through, and it's a voice detector. Mm-hmm. And each time it identifies two separate voices that cannot, like the first voice, the physiology of it can never produce that voice. It's so weird. So where's that coming from? You know what I mean?
So this is interesting. You'll find this interesting. So I've only had this experience once in my practice, but there was a new patient in the office, and I had my girlfriend that is the channeler, or the visionary. She for a period of time worked in my office as an assistant too. And so she actually went into this new patient experience with me, and the woman had multiple personality, and she was cycling through her personalities while we were having this new patient conversation. And I'm so glad she was with me in there, because it was my first experience seeing that happen. And so it was like, there would be the older woman, and then there was like a baby, and then there was like a toddler, and it just kept going. And I didn't know what was happening. Honestly, I was not prepared for it. And so when we left the room, because I needed a moment, she pulled me aside, and she's like, do you know what's happening? There's multiple spirits working through her right now, because she's trapped with them basically, since it split from whatever happened to her, obviously. But just like alcohol, I don't know if you believe this, but I think like when people have multiple personalities, essentially like they're one way and then they get super hammered and they're a different way. It's like, you know, it's probably not your spirit controlling your body anymore.
I believe that a lot, right? Like when you get blacked out drunk, like go look out.
Right.
Because
right. And once I learned that, I was like, woo, I have like a completely different respect or fear, I don't even know what you want to call it, over alcohol. Because I was like, I do not like the thought that something else is dropping into my system and taking my body for a joyride, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the thing, right? Like you were talking about the different multiple personality. It's not split personality. It's multiple personality disorder. Mm-hmm. People's physiology will change, right? Their eyes will change. Their colors of their eyes will change. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to Bruce Lipton with the environment sending the signal, the environment, so that the spirit would come in, and then that, or whatever you want to call it, spirit, source, whatever, it would come in, change the signal, change their features. Mm-hmm. And now you have a totally different person. So right back to epigenetics, you know what I mean? Like it's crazy how
And so it makes me feel like when people say things like science is settled, it's like science is never settled. Like we are always learning more. And we're always evolving.
That's the point of science, though, right? Like it says always update the new hypothesis or the theories, right? Like it's just always it's a theory until it's a law, right? Like it's, I don't know, the law of gravity, but it's really law of gravity, like a real like gravity. It's just, you never know,
right?
Never know.
You now all of a sudden are like, well, what do I know? I don't even know what I know. Yeah.
But that just, I never even thought about the the blacked out drunkenness, like to think about that. Like, but when you're sitting there watching this person with different personalities, like what are you feeling?
I was uncomfortable because I hadn't seen that before. And now having that experience, it's like, yeah, it was a learning experience for me because I had not witnessed that before. And that was before. So my mom has had like severe mental illness for a while. And it's interesting how you say what you just said, where, she looks like a different person. Her eyes are really different than they used to be. And I believe that there's always potential for people to heal. So that's something that I believe in my core, because if everything is energy and energy can change, then I can't do it for another person, but that person could shift their energy and get a different result. I don't know what the trigger or the opportunity would be that would cause that, but I think that. And so, when I see people who are really struggling, it's so fascinating also to think about what is it going to take for that person to have an opportunity to see something different, to make a shift so that their physiology or their human experience that clearly is suffering right now would have a chance to possibly change and heal.
You can absolutely change and heal. Anita Marjani had a near-death experience. Her body was ridden with cancer. I mean, she withered away to nothing, had a near-death experience. It came back. I can only imagine how much energy she came back with. Within a week, her entire body was healed. I mean, and there's cases and cases and cases of this happening.
Right.
You just got to tap into that.
Why don't we study more and more of that instead of like the status quo, and I know why. I mean, I think it's because we have a system that makes money off of the other thing, but yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly right. Like why we have a cure. It's the big pharma, right? Like they don't want to find a cure. And that's just me talking right now. Like that's just me.
I agree with you.
It's just me talking. It's,
but it's also part of where I believe like, okay, I don't believe things are doom and gloom. And, even when you say like, oh, people don't want to change possibly. Well, I think we're all evolving. Right. So my girlfriend that I really love talking to her because she's down all these great rabbit holes too. She said, what did we think it was going to feel like for more and more people to wake up to like different ways of caring for themselves or different ways of looking at things? Usually we all wake up from something that really squeezes us or contracts us. And, the world has obviously been in a massive contraction over lots of things. And so also lots of people waking up to lots of new ideas. So perhaps this is the healing event and it just feels like shit,
Well, I think it's the death event. I think it's the death of the old.
Yeah.
In order for the light to come up, all the darkness has to be, shined on. So I think that's what you're seeing right now is that transition of us going into a different awareness vibration collectively as society, as Earth. And you're seeing a lot of the death of the old, and you're seeing like that transition's tough, even with myself. Like, I feel like, I'm going through a transition, like, as you, Suzanne Giesman, I guess that's how you say her last name. Sorry, Suzanne, if I butchered that, but she talks about how you align with the vibration. And as you align with this vibration, as you change, that's why you lose friends. That's why you lose family members, is because you started tuning to a different vibration. You started rising up and rising up. And I think you're seeing you're seeing the Earth do that. And if enough people do it, then we'll finally get to maybe where we can start thinking about, telepathic communication. I don't know.
Yeah. Have you heard of the Schumann resonance before?
No.
you would probably geek out looking at that. So the Schumann resonance is like the frequency of the earth, like that they measure like the energy of the actual planet. Just like we all have frequency coming off of our bodies, whether you call it aura, whatever you want to call it. And it has been like way higher in its measurements in the last like year to year and a half, which I thought is so interesting too. And I sometimes wonder too, like when in the practice, we'll see like people come in waves, like where all of a sudden there's a lot of people with vertigo, or there's a lot of people with left arm or right arm radicular pain or something like that. And I just find it so interesting to just try and watch these patterns and then wonder, okay, what's the earth doing right now? Because, you know, just like the animals ebb and flow with things as far as full moon, so do we. You know, we just aren't, again, really taught to be aware of the animalistic part of us.
Yeah, well, that's my wife. She's an RN. She works in labor and delivery. Whenever there's a full moon, watch out. But yeah, there's like, I'm definitely going to kick you out on that. But also, like, if you follow like Dean Radin, he's like one of the lead scientists at the the Institute of Noetic Sciences. They did a big study on random number generators and like the collective energy, like during the O.J. Simpson trial, like, you know, what the effect of the collective emotional outbursts were, like on these randomness number generators around the world, and they were affecting them. They were not being random anymore. They were, you know, whether it's, you know, 51, 52%, that's still out of what, you know, 30 million people. That's still a huge, significant finding. And they actually took them around the world to different, like religious sites, you know, the pyramids and Israel and, you know, these locations. And just because of the energy that's there, because of the, whatever you want to call it, are having these effects on these random number generators, you know. So that means to me that we have this power inside of us, this radiation that we can let off that affects matter, right? Like that affects things, and you can feel it. I mean, you feel it, right? Like when you come, you're talking about that. People come in and lay on your table, and you can see the effects of energy. And it's like people need to be more aware about the energy that we have and how we entangle with others, because we absolutely entangle our energy with other people. It's called quantum entanglement. You know, like,
yes.
And then you're affected by them even when you're not around them, you know, like it's science. There is some good science out there. There is some science that has been developed that makes you really just wonder what our reality truly is. And, you know, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I would 100% agree. That's the stuff that makes me so excited, because I think us having this conversation and then it ripples off and more people, whether they even hear it or if it's just in the field and it's like accessible, like I really think this matters. And this is part of what moves the needle into the world we're trying to create. And by trying to create, I mean the world that we want to live in. Now we know some things of what we don't want to live in, especially in this past year and a half. Okay, contrast, just like Esther Hicks says, from the contrast, you get clarity on what you do want. And so I think, like we said, you know, science is going to continue to evolve, and it's always going to be outdated too, because if we're evolving, our species isn't set. You know, you think about like, we think about cavemen before. Well, we're the cavemen to whatever's, you know, millions of years in the future, where they're going to look back and be like, oh, they were so ridiculous. Like
I think they are. They might. Hopefully we're, hopefully we don't go extinct.
True. I don't know. I mean, even if, let's say, us as humans right now went extinct, something would evolve, you know?
But here's the thing, right? Would Trey's consciousness be that new evolution, right? Would Trey's consciousness, my awareness, like, you know, how the human species, right? Like what was my awareness before? Like, what was it? Another, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy.
Okay. I would guess that you have witnessed in your own consciousness, you can see the evolution of your thinking from years ago to now, right?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Right. Me too. So if that just continually is happening, and then we're birthing in kids who are already at a higher consciousness, and then what comes off of their circuitry and their ability to shift this field. I mean, it's just the field. By the field, I mean like the collective, you know, putting their new thoughts in. It's like, I don't know. I have to put my mind there, because otherwise I think it feels too dark to think that it's not moving in.
But there's so much, you know, you talk about Lynn Taggart, like all the work that she's done with the field, the quantum field. Have you read her The Power of Eight yet?
I need to.
Oh man.
Okay. It's on the short list. Okay.
The Power of Eight is game changer, like worthy. It is, it's all about setting an intention in prayer, like group prayer. She narrowed it down to 8 people. Like she used to have mass prayer and make effects, like just with her intention. Like, let's say there's 8 people here, and let's say we're praying for you, like your health and your wealth and positivity, like you would see significantly like increased effects from that. And some of the studies that she does in that, I cannot wait to talk to her, because some of her practice, some of her statistics, some of her data is just, I don't know why I'm not praying enough, you know, just from her book. Like it makes a difference in your life. It's like, there's data that supports, you know, the more that you pray for someone else, it's like reciprocal. It's like, now you're starting to see what you're praying for the other person. Like what I'm praying for you is showing up in my life. Those
universal laws, right? Yeah.
Oh, this has been, I could just talk to you all night. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know, right?
Where can people find out more about you? Where can they go?
Okay. Well, my website is just Dr. Lona Cook, and LONACOOK. And my book is called Reclamation, The Evolution of a Hot Mess. And that is on Amazon. So those are, and then social media outlets.
Reclamation. I can't even say it. A hot mess. Hot mess.
Yep. The Evolution of a Hot Mess. Yep.
I love that. What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I think my purpose is to just like continue to like push the forefront of like human potential. So I love these conversations because it stretches me. And then I learn, hey, I need to go read this book. And then I meet more people that are doing the same type of work. And so, you know, I really would love to be a huge movement for people reconnecting to themselves and knowing that they carry a lot of power when they're connected back into like who they really are, in that connected state with God or source, however you want to look at it. And I don't say that from a like religious standpoint. I say that from like, that is our true nature. And I think so many things in our current culture have distracted us from knowing our true nature. And by getting us back to that point, like it makes so much difference, not only in our lives, but then those we influence around us. So, yeah, I really hope to be a good voice to help people know that at any point they can come back to that.
Well, have you ever heard the term Christ consciousness?
Yes.
What is that?
It's enlightenment. It's connection.
Connection, enlightenment. Like, what is that realization though?
I don't know. I think it's that it's all connected. We're all one.
So is it like, so I've come across that, right? Like that realization, like and I'll say it too much, but it's like, are we God, right? Like, is it God that I am? Is it the source? Like, because I've had powerful meditations where, you know, I've said to Jesus, you know, hey, I love you. And he says, well, if you love me, you love yourself.
Yeah.
And there's like breadcrumbs in the Bible of him making reference to us as being God-like. So I've been reading a lot of Paul Selig and a lot of different people, and like they're pointing towards that, the idea that we are God. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think we are, okay. So if the ocean is God or sunshine, the sun is God, we are like a droplet of that. So I think we retain those abilities to be part of that whole. And also that's where like sin, or if you want to call it left brain or disconnection, I mean, you could call it all these different things. And I think it just means like somehow you've taken free will to disconnect yourself from knowing that you are part of this whole tapestry of everything that is part of this intelligence. So, how can you look at a baby and see the perfection but not see it in yourself? Or, there's just so many things. Again, it goes back to that we haven't been taught this. We've been taught a lot of things to disconnect ourselves, and also even the church. The church has done a great job of teaching you that you need the church to have a relationship with God, and where you're sinful and where you're wrong and where you should feel shame. And, I'm not trying to ride the church hard, but I think there's a lot of not good that's happened that, again, separates people from this connection. So,
well, I believe 100% we are individual aspects of that. But what if we're the ocean? Like, what if our hearts, what if our hearts are the bridge to that ocean, and we're just waves? What if we're truly the ocean? What if we are the ocean?
I don't know.
Just having a wave.
An experience, right?
Yeah.
It could be. It's trippy stuff to think about. And I think about that sometimes too, of like, if I'm a point of consciousness and everything that is happening is through my lens, because I'm the only point that I can see right now, like, yeah, it gets hard to know, like, what am I actually experiencing right now? And like, it's almost like a game.
What if it's a game? What if it is a game? What if this is the entire point, is to have a game?
It kind of goes into those dystopian movies too, where you're like, I don't know which one it was, where they're like, some people are watching you as you think that you're in this, like,
what's that movie with Jim Carrey? Ed? No, it's not Ed TV. I can't remember the name of it.
I know what one you're talking about.
Jim Carrey, and he's
The Truman Show.
Truman Show.
Yeah.
Nuts.
Right. There's something more happening, and I hope at some point I'm let in on really what this is.
I think you will be.
I think so too.
Lona, this has been amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story, sharing your thoughts, sharing your philosophy with my audience. I know that I enjoyed it, and I know they will too.
Thanks, Trey. You're doing amazing things. I learned so much every time we talk.